Okay. This was one that came to me relatively recently, where I thought that we could probably take on the somewhat recent movies, where a dude has a tragedy happen to him, and so he decides, when the justice system does not treat the whole thing fairly, they decide to take matters into their own heads, and bloodshed ensues. Which, of course, started with I feel like it's been around forever, but obviously this whole thing kind of basically was set off by Death Wish, with Charles Bronson in, 1972, I want to say. Was the first one, anyway. And Death Sentence itself, I believe, is based on, like, the same book, or in the same series of books that the book that Death Wish is based off is. I want to start with Death Sentence, actually. Law-Abiding Citizen is, like, really, like, over the years kind of increased significantly in popularity, I've learned, which is very interesting.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
It's weird.
But we'll go to Death Sentence first, because it came out 2 years prior. They feel so far apart. Death Sentence is only 2 years older. I remember when I did not intentionally connect this to this week, I swear to God. I remember plain as day the first time I saw the trailer for Death Sentence on the Bourne Ultimatum. And I did not know that it existed until I saw that trailer. And to this day, 9 years later, I remember that trailer so vividly, and how badly I wanted to see this movie because of it. They played the score from 28 Days Later in it, and it was a very good trailer. And of course promoted as James Wan's next movie, because Saul was really in the spotlight by this point. So obviously it begins. And naturally, because for every time we have a movie where we're going to get to a horrible tragedy, we have to start off showing you how happy everybody is. So you can be that more sad when one of them dies viciously.
Like you do.
And makes the rest of them sad. But to start off, it is a bit, much as I love the movie, it is a bit much going in that first 10 minutes. They really lay it on thick in regards to not only the opening scene. It's a nice opening credit number with the home movies, where we see the progression in home movies and the kids are growing up and stuff like that, and like the characters are pretty much loosely established in that, as our opening credits happen unceremoniously. But then we get a whole lot, like in the frame of like 3 minutes. We are just absolutely bombarded with foreshadowing. Because we start off with, he's like in risk assessment, or whatever it's called. He's like the CEO of a company or something. And he's going through all the different things in regards to this risk thing. And he's talking about all the bad things. And one of them is a death in the family, which he just laughs off. It's like, oh, well then. And then, maybe I'm reading too much into it, I doubt it, but maybe I'm reading too much into the dinner scene. When he comes home, he's just been at work, and the kids are being rowdy. And so, just kidding around, because it's, boys being boys and all that stuff. He says, they're fighting a little bit, and he says, I really wish you guys would be civilized before I have to kill someone. Yeah, because I have a feeling, I'm not positive, but I have a feeling he might actually do that later. We'll just see. We'll see what happens. We'll see how this plays out. Maybe he won't kill anybody. And then there's the real blatant one when they're talking about, it's right before, it's when he and Brendan are in the car, and Garrett Hedlund and his gang are coming from the other way. And he's saying, like, right before we cut to Garrett Hedlund, though, Garrett Hedlund's character is the one that sets all this off, of course. So they're riding in the car, and he's talking about how, oh no, this is when they're at the gas station, so this is literally before it happens. This is right before it happens. He's turned away from the convenience store window, and he's talking to Kelly Preston on the phone, and he's making a joke about how Brendan's going to run away and go to Canada and play hockey. And, like, just as the gang is pulling up to the gas station, he's jokingly saying into the phone, "So, yeah, we're never going to see our son again." Oh, man. That's landed on way thick.
Yep.
But sure enough, here comes Garrett Hedlund and Matt O'Leary and this whole initiation thing when the dude, you'd think maybe he'd get shot by accident. Maybe he'd, like, take a knife to the gut or something. Nope. They whip out a damn machete and slice his throat because it's a James Wan movie. James Wan circa Saw movie. Obviously James Wan hasn't been all out in the gore department for a little while now. But man, was he in it in this phase. And then, of course, it becomes the whole... Kevin Bacon's the only one that saw this go down. There's no security cameras. There's no murder weapon on the scene. It's just his word. And we get this fantastic moment when he decides, his lawyer tells him he's only going to get 3 to 5. If we try for life, we're going to overshoot it, and he's just going to be set free. Because that's the way it works. So Bacon's like, well, okay, I'll just say I didn't see anything, and then they'll let him go, and then I'll take care of it. Problem solved. Supposedly. But you'll notice what both of these movies very much have in common is both of them have a setup that is very basic, clean-cut revenge movie. Obviously, the guy in Law Abiding Citizen gets executed, which, of course, he tampers with. And then 10 years later, he finds the other guy and mutilates him, too. Should be the end of the movie, just like here. Bacon tracks down Matt O'Leary, kills him. That should be it.
Should be.
But all we do is set off a chain of terrible, horrible follow-up events. Where any normal revenge movie would be ending. So, not to say mutilating a guy the way Clyde Shelton does would be the end of a movie, but it depends on what movie we're talking about here. If it's an Eli Roth movie, probably. But we're not. Not today, anyway. So, the thing about it, and they set it up kind of well, too, with a particular line that Bacon's character says, which is, when he's being questioned by that guy at his job, just as a normal conversation, and he says, I have no idea what I'd do in that situation, I'd probably snap, and Bacon just calmly says, you really just don't know what you'd do in that situation until it happens, and, you might just surprise yourself. Which is basically exactly what happens to him. Because this character pretty much, you always kind of think when a character snaps, or even in real life when somebody snaps, your immediate thought is, somewhere deep down, they probably always had that in them. It was just kind of waiting. But with Nick Hume, I don't think that was ever I don't think this guy was ever supposed to be the guy that he turns out to be. Just a whole bunch of shit that was not supposed to happen happened, and he became what he becomes. Very, very tragically. And speaking of Kevin Bacon, the way this movie works, James Wan's direction, shock surprise, is incredible. Of course it is. It's a James Wan movie. But really, even though the great stuff that Wan does and the way he handles the tone and how, things progress and what's extreme and what's kind of pulled back, which isn't much. It's a lot of it goes to the extreme. Really what was going to make or break this movie and really kind of show us what direction we're supposed to go was Bacon's performance. Bacon's performance was pretty much the centerpiece that was going to tell us which direction we were going. If he was going to do it, big or over the top or whatever, or try to be Bronson or whatever, that's basically what the rest of the movie was going to be, and it probably would have been just a big mess. And would have very much clashed with the vision Wan clearly has. But, obviously, Bacon finds this very, very realistic approach to this character. And the emotion is really, really raw. And you can really see him as an actual human being. Even if he were outside of a movie. and the rest of the movie kind of feeds on that and gives it this whole feel that really helps with the not just the intense realism of it, but the tragedy of it too. Because good God, is this movie dark and depressing?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
holy shit! Once Brendan is killed, this movie never sees a silver lining ever again, and that's in the first 10 minutes. They just go absolutely in that direction, and it does not let up. You gotta be prepared when you go into this movie. It's most likely not what you're expecting when you see it as like just a guy's pushed to, like a Straw Dogs movie. A guy's just pushed to the limit and he fucks people up. This movie goes to some really depressing places, quite shockingly given how mainstream the movie was. And while we're on that, there's even the moment where obviously going on his realism, he's also, even when he goes into that hardcore area, he's still, the normal guy is still somewhere inside him. Take for instance the scene after he buys all the guns from John Goodman and he's in the garage and he's going through them. And this is the part normally where they suit up and they do, like the Hot Fuzz scene when just the suiting up and all that stuff. The suiting up scene in this movie is Kevin Bacon in his garage fumbling with the guns and trying clumsily to figure them out. I always like that little approach to it. And while we're on the subject of just the really dark places this movie goes, let's shed a light on our villain, our main villain, who is Garrett Hedlund. I'm not sure. I don't think he's actually a skinhead. I think he's just bald. But I'm not completely sure because Garrett Hedlund normally has a lot of hair. But for this particular role, his head is shaved. So I'm not sure if he's like technically a skinhead because none of them. No, he's kind of one of only a few of them that do that. So you can actually see them all here. A lot of them have hair, so I don't think they're actually a skinhead gang. I think it just makes him look intimidating, which it works. Garrett Hedlund's performance in this movie is so commanding. Like every single time he's on screen, you fucking know he's the damn villain, and it's great. Like you would think, you would kind of play it kind of over the top or something, but he was the perfect person for this role because he wasn't gonna take this over the. I mean, he yells and breaks stuff and gets pissed off, but he never goes like into full on cartoon mode. He's very much a guy that. He's the guy where if you walked into a bar, he's the guy kind of sitting in the back with his gang that you don't go anywhere near. Like he has a real intimidation about him, much like the rest of the movie that fits in. And just, like I said, every single second of screen time he has, he just completely has your attention. And he's even got that, and so, like sometimes he's, the, angry, pissed off, violent guy. But then when he's just kind of in his element, he's got like that swagger about him. It's very fucking villainy for starters. But he's also got that, like he knows he's a badass quality. Like the way he smokes his cigarettes and the way he wears his jacket. Like I said, he's so villainy. In that sense, it sounds very theatrical. But within the confines of the movie, he actually plays it up very. This feels like a real dude. That you would avoid all contact with in real life. I love the way he played it. And you kind of go on also to Matt O'Leary, who plays his brother, who's not in the movie very much, but obviously. But you probably know him from Frailty. He was the older brother in Frailty. And he's really good here too with the little bit he has, because he's got to be intimidating also in that kind of... I don't know if it's inept. I don't know if you'd call it that, but it's clear he's the little brother. Mm-hmm. But he's just as insane. But the way he plays it is really skillful because he plays it in a way to where you can kind of tell, like, when you look at Joe, it's like you can see immediately that his whole life he's basically just been looking at Billy and imitating. And that really, like, it's never brought up. Their brotherly relationship is barely a thing. And they only have, like, 2 scenes where they're brotherly like before Joe is killed. But just in that little sense, you really get that vibe that he's somebody who kind of grew up with Billy and is kind of emulating what he sees, and that's the way he plays the character. And I thought that was, with the little screen time he had, I thought that was portrayed really well. And says a lot about the character that we barely know. Going on small screen time too, John Goodman, who was heavy in the advertisements, has 3 scenes in this movie. And he's kind of set up, because he is Hedlund's dad, it's basically set up like he's going to be some big figure. Like he's going to be, like John Goodman would be like the boss level or something if this were a video game. But no, he's very much on the sidelines of this, despite his position in the story, which I find really interesting. And in these 3 scenes that he has, he really, really makes an impression. That scene, the scene with him and Bacon, is really, really good. When he sells him the guns, and then he reveals who he is, and there's that kind of thing. I feel like that scene kind of loses power in the following scene when he tells Billy he was playing it up. And that he actually is protective of Billy. I really like the way they played the character in that second scene with Kevin Bacon. And I thought that was watered down a little bit when it was revealed he was just trying to get Bacon out, and he was actually real protective of Billy. But still, that also does add a layer to his character, though. Even though it's right before he fucking dies. Still, we get that just a little bit more character in there, that makes the character more interesting, for sure. But I much preferred the scene prior to it, so there's that. Another recognizable face you probably see is Lee Whannell, the writer of Saw and Insidious and such, who is in Billy's gang. He's like right over here somewhere, I think. Yeah, right here. I get that why he's in the movie, because it's a James Wan movie. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say, good God, he sticks out. Really, like the gang is here and they're all intimidating and they're all like dirty and tattooed and they're just gonna fuck your day up, and they will literally kill you. They don't care. They kill to get into the gang. You just have to kill a random dude. That's how you become one of them. These people are terrifying. And then there's Lee Whannell. It's like, is he somebody's little brother? How did he get here? Like, is he just kind of hanging out on the side? What is he doing? You know, because we learned with Joe, even if you're a little brother, you gotta do it. And I don't really necessarily buy that his character did something to get in this gang, but because it's a James Bond movie, he's here, and, you know, you gotta help your friends out, I guess. And he's doing fine by himself anyway. It's just, in this movie, he really sticks out. Just to throw that criticism out there. And obviously Kelly Preston is his wife, who does well with what she has. She doesn't get to do much other than be the grieving mom, which, you know, really, given the amount of time that takes place in this movie, that's really all the time she has to be, because something really unexpected happens in this movie. The home invasion is, to me, I mean, I've seen like 9,000, I've seen over 9,000 movies, I know this. And every now and then, something like this just really, really catches me by surprise, even though it might seem kind of the logical way to go, I guess. But I'd be lying if I didn't say, I was kind of floored when I first saw this movie, and Garrett Hedlund straight up fucking kills Kelly Preston with like 45 minutes of the movie left. like shoots her dead. And shoots their other son in the head. He survives, but still, shit. And that they really, the Cape Fear scene, when they're just hanging out in the dark, just waiting. And they show up, they kill the cops, they show up, they break into the house, they fuck it up. There's the moments when the dude with the shotgun is chasing Kevin Bacon around, and like every time that gun goes off, it is just a fraction of an inch away from killing Kevin Bacon and taking him out of this movie and ending it. Like, and every time he just dodges death left and right very narrowly. It's a really damn intense scene. And just when you think, oh, well, they're the heroes, I wonder how this scene will play out, he fucking shoots all of them. Like I said, 2 of them survive, but still, that's a pretty damn crucial scene. And you're just kind of reeling, like, you know, did that actually happen? And you're just in the next scene, you're still kind of thinking, oh, well, yeah, of course they survived. But then, no, it's confirmed that Kelly Preston died. And you're like, whoa, this shit's for real. And there's also a very brilliant scene in this movie. Something that I remember when the reviews came out, and a lot of critics didn't like it. But I'll be damned if they didn't praise the shit out of this scene, even if they didn't like it. And that's the fucking chase.
Mm-hmm.
There is a foot chase in this movie that is 10 minutes long. For a foot chase, that is fucking epic. And the whole thing is worth it. They go through the alleys and then through the kitchen, and then a lot of it takes place on that parking garage. And a large portion of it, once they get to the parking garage, is one take. A very, very impressive take where Kevin Bacon is going up he's climbing up the levels until they get to the top. And goddamn, it's a spectacular chase scene. And very, very well done. And, very interesting, the scene comes to an end with Kevin Bacon fighting the guy, and then they're in the car, and the car is going over the edge, and Bacon manages to jump out of it and land back on the roof just as the car goes down with the guy in it. Which is really weird, because obviously we know, 8 years after this, James Wan did Furious 7, this massive, massive blockbuster that everybody knows, where he recreated that scene with Paul Walker in the bus. It's like a callback to this scene in the parking garage in Death Sentence, of all the things in his filmography. I found it very interesting, even in a big, humongous, millions and millions of dollars movie like that. He made a callback to Death Sentence. I don't know if it was intentional or what. It has to be, because it's even shot the same way. So I thought that was really cool that he called back one of his, in comparison, much smaller movies to do that, which shows how much he seems quite proud of this movie, which I would be if I made this movie. And there's also some good use of color too. The whole aesthetic is quite good, but there's some cases where they use red, the scenes in the church, especially at the end, or the scene where he kills Joe. And the way this red just takes up the screen really makes these scenes unsettling. It really amplifies the unsettling nature of the scenes themselves. Particularly when Hume kills Joe. But the main thing I was going back to, that just keeps coming back to me whenever I think about this movie, is just the way it really approaches the realism of it, and how when he finally gets his revenge and kills Joe, it's immediate to him that he's anything but happy about it. There are those scenes where he's sitting at work and there's a little satisfaction in him, but just the way the whole movie is a downward spiral from then on, and how they really play it up, that's pretty much exactly what would happen, where you can seek revenge and you'll think it'll make you feel better, but it's just gonna do nothing but make a damn mess, a huge, huge mess that will probably take most of you down. And just the way it mercilessly approaches the story that way, I find very, very impressive, and I love that they handled it that way. That showdown, by the way, too, that really bloody, graphic showdown when he finally he shaves the rest of his... Normally, that's the whole look how crazy I've gone thing, but I do like that it's basically from where the wound in his head was. He had no choice to do that, otherwise he'd look really fucking stupid walking around with that patch of hair missing. So I like that they kind of gave him an excuse to do the Travis Bickle thing, as opposed to just saying, look how crazy I am. And I always liked, I like the detail. I never really notice it. I never remember it. It's every time I watch the movie again, it kind of catches me by surprise, and I'm like, that's a good detail. I really like it. The fact that he wears the jacket Brendan was wearing when they killed him, when he goes back, I think is a really nice detail. Um, and the really great thing, like the thing that would be mind-boggling in another movie, but for some reason it really feels like a perfect end to this movie. Um, I wonder how many people saw this movie and saw, because the movie, you get very bloodthirsty. Like you see Bacon going in, like the whole message is revenge will fuck you up. Don't do it. But, but the whole idea of it's all building up to Kevin Bacon, shaving his head, getting the shotgun, and just fucking everybody up in this bloody blast. He blows the guy's leg off. He blows the dude through the wall. Just all this bloodshed and all this build up. And when it's finally this big climatic final showdown with Billy, where both of them are coming from the same place of anguish and hatred and fury, just building to this big climax. When he does in fact kill Billy, we never see it. He cocks the gun and the fucking scene's over. And we just don't see it happen. That's fucking ballsy for starters. But the scene of them sitting there before it happens is so perfect. I feel like they made the right choice. I think there's like a deleted scene or extended scene or something where you hear the gun go off. But they took it out, which is fine by me. Because I know there's also an alternate ending when he's sitting on the couch watching the whole movie's bleeding to death. And he's just kind of like, he has that one last happy moment watching them, and we kind of assume it. Apparently there's an extended ending where we actually see him slump over and die. But I feel like everything that they did that's in the movie is in there for a reason. I don't think they left anything out that shouldn't have been cut. So, yes, very, very well done. And not to mention that even though this concept is like old as fucking dirt, we know this concept from beginning to end. We've seen it in a billion movies. With just his aesthetic and the way he tells the story, Juan still finds a way for... This movie feels unique in itself. Like, we know the story, and we know mostly how it's going to turn out. But just the look of it, and the aesthetic of it, and the way the action is, it has a real unique feel to it that kind of makes it really rise above just being another... revenge movie or a Death Wish ripoff movie. Yes, I always liked it, but over the years I've really, really grown to appreciate this movie a lot. So, yes, way to go, James Wan again. And so James Wan making a good movie is like Forrest Gump meeting the president. It's just gonna keep happening, and we're just like, yep, he did it again. Way to go. Oh, except Dead Silence, but fuck it. Let's go over to Law Abiding Citizen real fast. Law Abiding Citizen movie I was hotly anticipating in 2009, and it came out on my birthday, so it was super exciting. It was really nice. Once again, a movie that was very... its trailer was very interesting to me. It was Gerard Butler in a role that it was a very interesting role for him to take on. This was only 2 years after 300, which is kind of what a lot of people really started knowing for. P.S. I Love You was the same year as 300, so that too. So there was a lot of things that were very unlike this role that Gerard Butler was doing leading up to this. Just earlier in this year, it came out. The Ugly Truth came out, but it was he also Gamer was this year too. Though he was very busy this year, and this was his last one for this year. He was originally going to be Jamie Foxx's part, and they didn't know who was going to play Clyde, but then they were like, hey, dude, you should totally play Clyde. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And then they cast Jamie Foxx. So I'm curious if he had stayed Rice, who Clyde would have been. I'm very curious to know how that would have gone. I don't think anybody was in the running, because the spot was open when he was going to be Rice. And I think it wasn't until after he was Clyde that Jamie Foxx was cast, so... and once again, much like Death Sentence, you think it's going to be one thing. First off, the surprisingly realistic portrayal of the justice system, where revenge movies happen very, very quickly, typically. But in this case, it's there's the whole thing where it happens, and then we go through all the legal stuff. The very, very jolting, brutal opening scene where there's no hesitation. We jump right into how brutal this movie can get, with his wife and daughter being brutalized by Darby and the other guy. And then, obviously, the whole justice thing, and it's like, well, one of them's going to go free, but we can get the other guy, and it's all good, right? And he's going to be put on death row, like, forever. And then, sure enough, there is a 10-year jump in time, and finally this dude is getting it. And then it's like, you don't typically see that in movies. We typically just go right to it, and just let audiences assume that that's how it goes. But they put the whole 10-year stretch of time in it, which obviously is actually quite important to the plot, because obviously Clive would not be able to pull this off in any time under 10 years. His whole plot. And his whole idea of intentionally getting arrested for the murder of Darby, and then basically getting himself off, and then throwing it in their faces that they were going to let a killer walk out. It's a really good concept. It's a really good setup for a movie. And this character in particular, he's one of those characters where he's a fucking psychopath. But number one, we know how he got there, and secondly, regardless of how crazy he is, a lot of people seem to relate to him. Some very, very angry, average people who see the justice system the way he does and have been cheated by it the way he has been. Which kind of leads to some interesting debate that I'll get to at the end. But let's go through the rest of the movie first. There's sometimes... F. Gary Gray is the director, who obviously... I've been talking about quite a few of his movies lately. He's good. He's very good at what he does, F. Gary Gray. He's a very talented director. And here, for starters, I always forget this is his movie. Because it's so... He doesn't necessarily have a distinct style, per se. But usually it's in my head when he does a movie. I typically forget he did this. Like, I have to remind myself. And sometimes, it's a little, it's a bit, maybe flashy and not the best way. Like, there are some scenes that are a little heavy on, symbolism and all that stuff. One particular scene towards the beginning when, Jamie Foxx is missing his daughter's recital. Because they put that cliche in this movie of all movies. And it's the scene when, you know what moment I'm talking about. When we're at the recital and he's at the execution. And we get the scene of the curtains at the recital opening. And then we cut to the curtains at the execution opening. And it's like, I'm really not sure what the fuck that symbolizes. Except for the different places they are. And they're... I don't know, but it sure looked flashy in the editing room, so we're gonna go with it. And so yes, much like with this brutal execution scene, I do find it very effective how suddenly we jump into it, because violence is treated two different ways in this movie, and I like that. And that is that sometimes it's very, very sudden. Like I said, we barely have an opening before the attack happens that sets the whole thing off. But then we have scenes like the jump scare with the judge's death. That gets fucking everybody. Like, that scares the holy shit out of everybody. Everybody I've ever seen this movie with. That scene just is one of those big moments. But then we have the steak bone scene. The steak bone scene is very, very good. It's very, very well done. No, seriously, no pun intended. Where it's a lot of build up. Like, there's the scenes where the violence just comes like that, a lot of the times unexpectedly. But then we have this steak bone kill. Where he's like, I want to order food. And then he gets real specific with his order. and then the food is brought to him, and then he's eating it very slowly, and then he offers some to his cellmate, and then he gets all the way down to the bone, and then he hides the bone, and it's just a long build up to this insane payoff. This fucking scene when he kills the dude with the steak bone, for the love of shit. That scene alone had them in NC-17. They had to cut it down. It was the only thing in the movie that had them in NC-17.
Really?
They had to cut it down by a little, clearly only by a little bit, because they show a damn lot of it. Good God. I can barely look at that scene. It makes my fucking neck hurt. But I appreciate that it is so bloody and so gruesome and so brutal, because we had such a long build up to it. I just really loved the way that played out, and how it kind of balances out with the often sudden bursts of violence that we get. That in itself is a sudden burst of violence, but we know it's coming because he's got the fucking steak bone in his hand. We know where that thing's going. And for a while there, this movie's all well and good. For a while there. It does start to lose itself. Obviously the whole point of the steak bone is that, he's got to get to solitary confinement. And that's kind of where we jump the shark. For a while there, like I said, the movie's really good. It's got a lot of build-up. There's some pretty shocking surprises in there. And there's, like, the pacing, too. Like, that whole, like, the whole thing, like, leading up to the steak bone is, like, the entire first half of the movie. And it blows by. But then we get to the second half. And for a little bit there, we build it up like a mystery. When people are starting to get offed with his plan, setting his plan in motion. And we're like, well, who can it be? Because he's in solitary confinement. And then there's like a little mystery around it. Like, who could be helping him? And who is this mystery person? Well, I'm not sure. Yeah. The whole thing about, ooh, who's this mystery person? Oh, what's going on? What is this? Yeah, he just fucking walks out of prison sometimes. He built up this whole thing. I know it's all part of the plan. The Joker told me. I know. I know it's all part of the plan. I get it. But I feel like we just really jumped the shark, don't you? Like, that's kind of... It really felt like we were going somewhere real good. And it's like, nah, he just fixed it to where he can just walk out and do shit and go back unnoticed. It's like, wow, you're really stretching it now. I mean, I can buy it to a point. I really can, to a point. But then it kind of gets to a point where you're just like... okay, there's only so far we can stretch until we're in the ridiculous and the entirely, completely, and totally implausible. Once we get to that point where Michael Kelly is the guy that tells them, like, you know, he can watch your every move, he knows everything you're doing, and it's like, ooh, that's mysterious. And it's like, no, literally, he's like, he can just walk around and watch you. And it's like, oh, man, that's a letdown. Talking about it, and then, yeah, that basically goes from there. The whole script basically takes that and says, it's like the script is saying, we have this really carefully calculated, we got this really great setup, we got this character that's really bad, but people kind of root for, too. We got all the good stuff in here. And then we eventually reach this point where it's like the script just decides to do whatever it's gonna do. And it seems like it's taken really cheap shortcuts after a while. And it's just like, oh man. You had something so good going and then it just kind of, I don't know. It just kind of, it just feels like it's cheating after a while. And that's very unfortunate for such a good setup. So, going back to that debate, apparently a lot of people lately, I imagine it's like edgy teenagers, mostly. But it could be, you know, regular average people. Apparently the popular opinion to watch this movie under is that Gerard Butler's the good guy. For starters, a psych evaluation's in order, if you believe so.
Yeah.
Secondly, yes, he does have a point, and he is trying to make a point that's very, very prominent, and should be something that's looked into, and does it in a very, very effective way that cannot be argued. The guy is still a fucking serial murderer. There's no way around that. The guy is off his goddamn rocker and a complete and total psychopath. So basically the idea is they don't like the ending. There are two. It's a very controversial ending, starting with the fact that Gerard Butler loses because Jamie Foxx fucking blows him up, but basically also because his plan doesn't get to go through. They feel like it's a whole debate about should Gerard Butler have been able to blow up all the innocent people to prove his point. As a sane person, I'm gonna go with probably not. There are other ways to do this. They may not be as effective, sure. They may not be effective at all, sure. But I mean, you know, I don't know how many times I can say this. He's a fucking murderer. That's all there is to it. He fucking became what was pissing him off so much. He is that person now. The dude is gone. So far, incredibly off the map, gone. Now, the other debate I can understand. Jamie Foxx fucking blowing him up. Yeah, I don't think that was the solution, Jamie Foxx. The dude's in damn prison, just lock him up tighter. Take away his damn holes, or however the fuck it was he was getting out. Take out all his fucking shit. Put him in fucking a metal room. Put him in Magneto's prison. Something. What do you accomplish blowing his ass up? So he straight up murders Gerard Butler, and then goes off to his daughter's recital, and it's like he's the good guy, and he showed up to the recital. Because that's what we all wanted to see. That's what we were all hoping how this movie would end, is that, darn it, he'd make it to see the recital. After blowing Gerard Butler to goddamn Kingdom Come. I don't know. The movie's a damn mess after a while, is the point I'm trying to make. They really flew off the rails here, and I get it. If that was the point, that'd be one thing. But I feel like it's really trying to make that serious point, to see where Clyde's coming from. But also the fact that Jamie Foxx is the good guy, and that the bad guy should die. I don't know, there's a lot of conflicting things here. So I don't know. I will say it's a very entertaining movie with a very, very good setup. I think it's very interesting to see Gerard Butler take on a role like this. And there's a lot of good side actors in there, like Cole Meany and Bruce McGill. Leslie Bibb's okay in her little part. You know, we got the hilariously brilliant Regina Hall in here just playing Jamie Foxx's wife, so she doesn't get to do anything, sadly. But yeah, it's an entertaining movie for sure. It's a good little thriller. There's a lot of intensity in it. It goes to some really dark places that you really got to commend it for. It's got a lot of good stuff in there, but just man, did they go off the rails. So clearly, I much prefer Death Sentence. And I'd love to see more love thrown Death Sentence. It's kind of faded a little bit. Like I said, Law-Abiding Citizen seems to be growing in popularity as time goes on. Mainly, I think, due to its relatable message about, you know, how fucked up the systems are and all that. But Death Sentence is just storytelling really, really done right in a lot of ways. And so, yes.
Okay. So ends another edition of Versus. So AJ's movie reviews was out 2 days ago. Check that out. And we had a brand new Sip and Snack. We had our next Halloween Horror Nights podcast where we talked about Orlando, Hollywood, Japan, and Singapore. That was on yesterday. And Gaming with Ash returns tomorrow. Next week, your cryptic comment is actually going to be Cave. And next week, as well, Friday, Suicide Squad will be coming to AJ's movie reviews, as well as The Killing Joke, and 9 Lives, and Sharknado 4.
I'll go ahead and tell them because I don't want to disappoint them too much. Sorry, the phrase "cave" has nothing to do with the descent. It's just,
You just had to tell them.
Well, and there's going to be probably some disappointment, so I just wanted to throw that out there immediately.
All right.
So
that being said, Podcast Network on Facebook fan page, on Twitter, and on Zazzle for merchandise. And welcome to August next week, which means at the end of the month, our first Academy Awards predictions are coming your way. That being said, I want to thank you guys and girls out there for watching. AJ, any parting words?
That's it.